Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another astrological report. This is for July 1st through July 7 of 2025. Hope you're all doing well. So this week we do have some pretty big changes taking place up in the sky. And some of the biggest stuff is going to be Venus and Uranus. Venus is going to reach a conjunction with Uranus at the very last degree of Taurus. And then Venus will be ingressing Gemini. So that's going to be a pretty big overall general change for relationship dynamics, general preferences for people, and financial matters. I think there's going to be some excitability as well, some surprises here and there within those dynamics, and Venus will be losing its dignity in Taurus, so it won't be as strong as it's going through Gemini. But we still have a very strong Jupiter that's holding things down here at the foundation of the chart. And some of these things will be challenged this week as well in different ways, and I'll explain why that is. But this will definitely be some of the biggest changes, and Uranus will be stuck at this last critical degree of Taurus for one more week. And it is critical. It is a sense of urgency for things to be changing that are normally stable. Again, this can deal with financial matters, the markets. So some volatility here, most likely coming in, but also a little bit of fixed energy too that's a little bit stubborn before the changes take place. And then by next week, Uranus ingresses Gemini, and it's a really big, rare change that's starting to take place. And by next week, as Uranus is in Gemini, it's going to kind of show us a glimpse of the future and what this new era is truly all about. We're not fully in the new era this year, and we're not moving forward in the new era completely this year because Uranus will eventually retrograde back to Taurus, and then Saturn and Neptune will eventually retrograde back to Pisces, and we still have things of the past in the old world that we're still closing out and restructuring before we're fully moving forward in this new world. But again, we're going to start to see some ideas of what this is all about, and I'll be talking about how I'm looking at Uranus and Gemini. It has a lot to say about revolutionary thoughts, ideas, and the way people are going to start to communicate things. And then there's other influences as well in a lot of different ways. So that's some of the biggest changes I see this week. We also have Neptune here. Neptune is not moving. It's going to be stuck here at 2 degrees for several weeks. It's going to be officially stationing retrograde on July 4. But even on July 4, it doesn't mean Neptune's just automatically moving backwards now, because it's going to have to build up a lot of momentum to start moving backwards. So again, it's going to be kind of stuck here at 2 degrees of Aries for a while. But it is officially changing direction, and then we'll slowly move back and come back to that old world of Pisces again before we're finally done with all that. So those are outer planet changes, pretty big changes overall. And then Venus coming through here is going to kind of bring everything to a lower level for us to really see in our everyday life as we go through this week. So those are 2 things happening. And let's see here. We also have the moon. The moon is at the last degrees of Virgo today. The moon will be ingressing Libra. So that's going to be a big mood change for the next 2.5 days coming in later today. And then the moon in Libra will form a square to the sun and Jupiter, which is the first quarter moon phase. It's also going to be basically a T-square, a cardinal T-square opposite Saturn, Neptune, and then square the Cancerian planet. So cardinal T-square is very powerful, change about changes and things being initiated, but it really comes into a new phase that's about relationships. I'll talk more about that. So the moon will be waxing through Libra, entering the first quarter moon phase, the crisis and action phase from the Cancer new moon. Moon will then ingress Scorpio for 2.5 days, which is going to be a deeper experience, not as easy. Then the moon will ingress Sagittarius at the end of the weekend into next week. And then, of course, we're building up to the Capricorn full moon by next week as well. So we also are going to have Venus, as Venus ingresses Gemini, it's connecting to that minor grand trine with Saturn, Neptune, and Pluto. So Venus sextile Saturn and Neptune, and then by next Monday, Venus will trine Pluto. as Uranus enters Gemini next Monday. All right, so we also have this Mercury. Mercury is going to start to lose its momentum now. It was moving very fast for a while, and now it's in its retrograde shadow and will be starting to slow down day by day. But it's in Leo, and it's currently ruling the circumstances of the moon and the south node and Mars. So Mars is still in Virgo. Doesn't look like Mars will make any major aspects this week, but it's still in a little bit of a critical position, mentally critical. The way people might communicate, the way people are trying to organize and manage things, and then it can also stir up health stuff for people, and that's going to be an ongoing thing. And of course, the South Node is eclipse territory where even the moon is moving through right now. So Virgo is an area of the chart where there wants to be a lot of changes for the future as well. All right, so it looks like most of the activity this week is going to be Venus, and then by next week, Uranus. But Uranus is wrapped up into all this Venus stuff as well, so just consider it Venus-Uranus this week, which again can start to change things. Now, Taurus is super stable, and Uranus is trying to create changes, but because Taurus is typically stable and Venus is still very strong, there can also be a sense of like trying to hold on tight to things and not allowing the changes to take place. So a little bit of stubbornness could start to come in as well, even within relationship dynamics. But then by next week, we're really seeing a lot of changes, and even more. I think we're going to really see a lot of changes as Venus enters Gemini. So we do lose that dignity from Venus, but when it comes to the markets, I think we will start to see some volatility at this point. But I'm kind of starting from scratch now. I'm starting over with my assessment of the markets, because now we've reached the all-time highs. This past 6 to 7 months is what I've been waiting for. So now I'm starting fresh, and now I'm going to have to evaluate what's ahead. But I haven't really done that yet too much, and I typically don't invest this time of year personally, because this isn't my best time of year for my own chart. Cancer season is not my best time of year personally. But I will be looking more into the market as time goes on, and I'll give some of my insights about what I think is ahead. But I would expect some volatility over this next week. All right, so let's look at this chart here. So, it definitely looks like there's going to be some challenges. Looks like the next few days could be a somewhat of some challenges, generally speaking. Doesn't mean every single person, but in the background, we do have some challenging aspects mostly this next 3 days. Once we start to get to July 3rd and then July 4th, there's a lot of inconjunctions, which can be a lot of adjustments and irritations and a lot of things that aren't flowing well together. And July 4th definitely has some interesting dynamics I'll be getting into when we're looking at the chart day by day. But then things seem to become a little easier here on July 5th as the moon and sun align from Scorpio to Cancer. But it's also a fateful day, and it's kind of still this deeper dynamic with the moon in Scorpio. Moon in Scorpio... Yeah, that comes in on July 4th, actually. And plus on July 4th, Venus is making those changes. So July 4th is definitely going to be very active with a lot going on. Of course, that's the United States birthday, so it'll be very busy here in the States of what's happening. It's kind of a mixed bag. It looks like we're going to have both easy moments and challenges throughout the week here and there in different phases. All right, so with that, I'm going to go through the chart day by day. And thanks to the new subscribers, and I appreciate all the nice comments. There's a lot of nice people out there that watch my videos. I appreciate you. And let's go through the chart day by day here. starting on Tuesday, July 1, we have the moon at the last degrees of Virgo. Completing this 2.5-day phase of Virgo, that's been a little more critical because the moon and Mars have been next to each other and the south node. And again, it's eclipse territory, so there can be a lot of intensity in that area. And, I talked about that in last week's report for Sunday and Monday. We definitely saw a lot more critical events going on. But now for today, the day starts off with the moon first thing in the morning here, trine down to Venus, as Venus is now at 26.5 degrees of Taurus. So there's a good flowing aspect, but there's also an inconjunction at the same time. So moon trine Venus, but also moon inconjunct to Chiron, which can have, maybe some adjustment to people's feelings, how they're feeling today, confidence levels. But it's still a day for the first part of the day that wants to be about, putting things in their proper order, making improvements, being more organized. It's an earth sign, so it wants to be more down to earth. And with this trine to Venus, there's an opportunity to looking at money and resources and values and trying to organize it or be even open to changes, because the moon is also trine Uranus for the first part of today. So the moon connecting well to this Venus-Uranus that's starting to come into this conjunction around changes and being innovative with management, how you work, how you live your daily life, and looking at your general preferences and just being more open to changes in this phase for the first part of today. It can also be a little better with relationship dynamics. There's that connection between circumstances and Venus is still very strong here before it loses its dignity later on this week. But we are going to see this change as the moon will then ingress Libra. And this will kind of, again, start to change the overall dynamics. As the moon ingresses Libra, it's now being ruled by this Venus. So for the next 2.5 days, the moon can still be very strong because it's being ruled by a strong planet, Venus in Taurus. But this is kind of the beginning of the process of changes to the overall relationship dynamics. So as the moon comes into Libra, this is more about air now, which is very much needed because we don't have a lot of air going on in this chart. Now we have a little bit of everything at this point. The moon is only temporary, and we do have Pluto in there, but that doesn't really count in my opinion. So now it's better to have circumstances moving through air because people can start to be more objective about things, try to be a little more detached and intellectual. It's more communicative and social at this point. But Libra also deals with one-on-one connections with people. So there's also a need to be more diplomatic and graceful and more cooperative with other people, generally speaking. However, because it's ruled by Venus and Venus is only a few degrees away from Uranus, I think, again, this is going to be the beginning of things getting a little more excited within relationships or changes, for good or bad. A little more volatility could start to come in with general relationships. But I still think that the moon here is going to show, with this strong Venus, people still want to be more of a, kind of compromising and diplomatic about things. So this is also about just general relationships on the world stage as well. So perhaps this next 2.5 days could show important events on the world stage with nation states, negotiations and deals trying to be made, strong relationship dynamics for people overall and on personal levels as well. Relationships become more important. Also, the need for beauty becomes more important. Making things more beautiful, trying to keep things more pleasant. But I think that also whatever happens the next 2.5 days within personal relationship dynamics will be kind of the catalyst for the changes that will come in later on in the week around people's preferences and desires and how they're doing relationship overall. Now, this is also, though, when there's a lot of tension that starts to come in from this point forward in a lot of different ways, because the moon is also opposing Saturn and Neptune. And remember, Neptune is stationing, even though it's not exact until July 4th. It's stationing all this week. It's already been in station pretty much, stuck here at 2 degrees. So the moon will also activate that. And with Neptune here not moving, Neptune is amplified more than normal. So it's amplifying this world dynamic, this world point of this dissolving away of the old world structures and systems and rules and laws, as Saturn is trying to quickly structure new systems, rules, and laws on this world stage. And so as the moon comes in here opposing that, it's all really amplified, most likely talking about world type of dynamics with nation states going through a lot of, perhaps negotiations or talks and just a lot of stuff about nation states with this new world development that's happening. But again, it can also amplify a little bit of uncertainty, doubts, confusion, not seeing everything clearly. Again, Neptune is just really amplified in kind of big energy this week. So the moon really picks up on that. But the moon also picks up on the Saturn, some of these pressures about relationship dynamics, especially on the world stage, because these are the cardinal points, which talk about the world and what's happening with the world. So a little bit of an opposition that comes in later on today. The moon is going to be changing signs in the afternoon hours, 2:16 on the west coast. So the evening hours on the east coast, late tonight into the overnight hours in Europe. So the mood really starts to change this afternoon. So you might feel a little bit of pressure depending if you have any personal planets at the beginning of the cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. Then you'll be most affected by this. And yeah, it could start to feel a little bit of the weight, a little bit of the pressure, sense of responsibility, duties, and obligations. Something more serious could come in. The mood becomes a little more serious, especially, again, of what's going on the world stage. And then the last aspect will be the moon making a trine aspect to Pluto. And that's where it's later tonight. That is about 8:30 on the west coast, so super late on the east coast and early morning hours in the UK and Europe. And that's where it's more social. It's connecting to group and community, politics, science and technology. Science and technology is a part of this new era that Uranus is only going to increase even more with changes with all that in Gemini. But the moon is connecting to circumstances, can be empowered or powerful circumstances socially with other people, groups and friends, one-on-one connections with people can get really amplified and really powerful. So those are the dynamics for Tuesday on July 1st. Let's move this forward and we get to Wednesday on July 2nd. And it looks like this is one of the more challenging days because the moon is squaring Jupiter and the sun for the first quarter moon. Now we do have one little easy aspect in between all that, and that's the moon making a sextile down to Mercury. That sextile will be basically 3:30 a.m. So most relevant for people in Europe and on the East Coast. Perhaps if you're waking up early, there is this little moment that's where the heart and mind are in better cooperation with each other. Mercury here in Leo is still a position that people are more bold with their communications and their self-expression, but the moon in Libra wants to be more diplomatic, more not wanting to do anything too crazy and keep things more pleasant. So that can help tone down a little drama that could be in the air, but things are still a bit challenged because the moon is still in this overall T-square and entering the first quarter moon phase, plus the square to Jupiter first thing in the morning kind of starts to really over-amplify everything. Moon square Jupiter, that could also show, it could go either way. It could be good or bad, and it could be, with different people having good or bad at the same time. So for some people, it could be a big appetite, so to speak, big needs, big desires for things. Circumstances could be a little bit over the top, or people could be making a big deal about something for good or bad. It could also be overly generous too. Sometimes with the moon in Libra and Jupiter in Cancer, that could be like tipping big, over tipping, just a little more generous than normal. But usually it shows that circumstances are overinflated, over the top, and there's a big need for something going on here that enters a challenge because, like I said, then the moon is squared the sun for the first quarter moon. And this really comes back to the new moon in Cancer a week ago. So the first quarter moon is the crisis and action point. This is where generally the world is challenged on how to move forward, how to expand in these more positive ways of getting what we need and what we want in a bigger way. How to feel satisfied and nurtured and supported. We might be challenged in that on Wednesday, late morning and afternoon. So Libra and Cancer square deals with relationships too. This can also be about family relationship dynamics. A little bit of a challenge, generally speaking, in some family relationships are possible. Plus, if you think about it, the moon here in this first quarter is being ruled by Venus, and Venus is reaching 28 degrees. Now it's getting closer and closer to this Uranus. So this could, again, start to be the catalyst for relationship changes for the future that will start to come in later on this week and next week. So important relationship dynamics could be playing out. Again, it could be about family matters, could be about on the world stage, another little challenge that some nations have to get past here. And usually the Cancer is about the United States. The United States is a Cancerian nation, and we are building up to our Jupiter return here as well for the United States. In fact, it's about this, it's right around this time, the USA having its Jupiter return, which is big energy for the United States that's trying to expand to the next level. And it shows that for this next 12 years, the United States will be starting to expand in different ways than the past 12 years. Now, with that said, this could be a challenge for the United States as well, this first quarter moon. I mean, I can't guarantee it'll be right on this day of Wednesday. It could be this whole week into next week. But even though Jupiter return and Jupiter in Cancer is typically very positive for the United States, it also can bring some issues out, unfortunately. Sometimes there can be crisis moments for the USA during this transit. So hopefully that's not going to be the case this week, but there's always a slight potential that there could be something going on here that's a little bit of a crisis moment. But generally, it's about how to move relationships forward because this is a first quarter moon within Libra. And on the world stage, it's about, a little bit of a crisis moment for negotiations between nations that are connected to the United States of how to move these things forward, into new territory for the better. So you're probably going to see a lot going on the world stage about deals and negotiations and, strong communications about those things. And then on personal levels too, maybe something's coming up within a personal relationship that you have to move past. I think this will be most relevant if you do have cardinal signs in your birth chart, especially around 11 degrees. Do you have any personal planets at 11 degrees of Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, or Aries? Then you might be wrapped up in this first quarter moon personally. And if not, not every single person will experience anything or a challenge in this moment on Wednesday, but it's in the background for the world. So how to move things forward. It's not about backing down. It's not about surrendering. It's about coming up with solutions, but also trying to be compromising and diplomatic and, look at the other person's perspective. On other levels, it could be about weighing things out, trying to be more objective and more balanced with your viewpoint in things. It could also stir up issues about homes and families. It can be a little bit of a moment here around immigration stuff that's coming up this next few days, and particularly here on Wednesday. Things like that could be coming up. And then real estate matters could be a little bit challenged. If you have a real estate deal going on Wednesday, just expect perhaps a little bit of a challenge. It's possible. So if you can avoid it, if you do have any kind of real estate stuff going on, if you can wait a little bit in between this phase, then you might be better off than trying to do it right in this moment. If you do it right in this moment and you have no choice on Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday late morning and afternoon, depending on where you live, then just know that this dynamic is in the background and try to be more patient and compromising and, try to negotiate something. But people are going to get a little more excitable and a little more rebellious perhaps as well with this Venus-Uranus building up. So just know that, and it could be playing out in the background. And that first quarter moon is basically the last aspect of the day at 11 degrees. And that's, again, the afternoon hour. So for the rest of the day, it kind of sets the tone for Wednesday afternoon and Wednesday night, a little bit of that challenge within relationship dynamics and how to keep the peace and the harmony and the balance and maintain, the beauty and not let things get too dramatic and over the top because of the Jupiter influence. Or again, on a personal level, it could just be, people could have a strong need for something and then be challenged on getting that in this moment. And what do they need to change? What do they need to do to be able to get their needs met, as time goes on for the rest of the week? So those types of things could be coming up here on Wednesday. And then, like I said, for the rest of the day, the moon is just waxing through Libra, being ruled by this Venus approaching Uranus. So that's probably the turning point for the overall relationship dynamics to start to change from that point forward, I would imagine. So also know that the background, people's preferences could start to change. It's not about doing things in the normal routine way. There's also like desires for something new for people within a relationship too. So try to not be too stubborn as well from this point forward within relationships and negotiations, or, be open to, if you're in a relationship dynamic and the person is acting a little bit different, know that this could be why. There could be a desire for something different or a change of some kind. And the more cooperative you can be with that, the better the relationship can be. Because if you resist it, if you're stubborn, if you are trying to control, then the other person can get even more rebellious perhaps. All right. Then we get into Thursday on July 3rd, and the moon is still waxing through Libra, and we only have a couple aspects, they're actually both minor aspects, so no major aspects on July 3rd, but we do have the moon in conjunct to the north node, and we do have one major aspect, moon opposing Chiron. So it starts with this moon in conjunct to the north node. So again, when it comes to relationship dynamics, both on the world stage and personal relationships, we might have some distractions. We might be wanting to be pulled into our own world of what's behind the scenes. There could be a little bit of either scandalous or something more scandalous in some cases coming out, or any kind of relationship dynamics playing out on Thursday could have an influence for the future as well that could be somewhat fateful in some way. And then the opposition comes in with Chiron, and there could be maybe some vulnerability that's in the air for most of the day on Thursday. This is going to be actually the evening hours, evening and night, depending on where you live. So be very careful, of hurt feelings or what's going on within relationship, because there's going to be a big mood change right after this. So this can bring up insecurities and vulnerabilities about the self versus other as we're going through Thursday evening and Thursday night. And again, it's being ruled by Venus, which is pretty much almost exactly conjunct Uranus, and it's reaching this last critical degree, a sense of urgency for something to be changing in relationship. So again, I think the next 2.5 days are going to really show the beginning of some sort of change overall within relationship dynamics, generally speaking. And then this is the big turning point as we get to Friday on July 4th. It starts off with the moon making an in conjunction to Venus and Uranus. And this is the overnight hours. On Friday, so Thursday night into Friday morning, there's a lot of adjustments that we're making based on relationship dynamics. So be very careful. Don't just be impulsive with what you're doing in relationship this week, especially at the end of the week, because it can have long-term consequences that you weren't expecting, or other people could, be acting in a way that you weren't expecting, because it is a sense of something more critical, a sense of urgency, like I said, for a change, and we're adjusting to that. The mood and the feelings are adjusting to that, which can also be a little bit irritating. There can be some unpredictability, some surprises, within these dynamics of general relationships. On early Friday morning, Thursday night into Friday morning, and then the moon changes signs. As the moon will ingress Scorpio, it's debilitation. And now the circumstances are no longer being ruled by this nice Venus in Taurus. Now the circumstances are being ruled by Mars in Virgo. Mars has a wide orb square to Uranus, but it's pretty wide. But now circumstances just can be a little more critical. It comes back to, Mars and Virgo, which can be a great placement for work and getting the job done and organization and knowing where things go and, management type of stuff. But it can also be a little more mentally critical, especially now because the moon is going to be building up a square with Mercury as well. And Scorpio, Leo squares can get somewhat dramatic and bold. So the moon here shows that the mood has now shifted to be a little more uncomfortable. And the mood is now in a deeper position of Scorpio. It's the deep end of life. It's more about emotions, but trying to control feelings and emotions, trying to be more private with how people feel. They don't want to be exposed as much, but they can also, in some cases, have a deeper desire for intimacy and deeper connection. And yet, Venus is reaching this position that isn't as likely to want to go deep, because there's going to be this change of preferences and what people are turned on by and attracted to after this moment goes through here, late this week into the weekend. Also, as the moon comes into Scorpio, this is when Venus is exactly conjunct Uranus first thing in the morning on Friday. So, I don't want to say that it's all negative. I guess there could be some exceptions that say there could be something excitable within a relationship. There could be a surprise person that comes out, or there could be something that's new and different within a relationship. So that'd be best case scenario, is something surprising and excitable. That's good. But again, we're seeing a lot of challenges here, because even the moon is squaring Pluto, and Venus conjunct Uranus is changeable, but it could also be stubborn because this is still Taurus, and Uranus is at this last critical degree of Taurus before it's changing. There's going to be some changes for Taurus for the better, actually. Once we get to next week, Taurus is finally going to be free of transits. Uranus has been here for the last 6 to 7 years. And again, a lot of Taurus people that have Sun in Taurus have gone through a lot of changes, and it all depends on the degree when that was over the past 7 years. But people that do have any personal planets at 29 degrees of Taurus, you're going to really be wrapped up in this dynamic this week as well. So it does look like there's some challenges here, in the general dynamics of the world. The moon going through Scorpio, the circumstances can sometimes deal with the taboos of life, the things that are, raw and deep and hidden, the things that people don't want to talk about and deal with. It's the raw side of life. It's not the pretty side of life. Scorpio deals with the underworld, the dark side of stuff a lot of times. So, those kind of dynamics could be coming out. But again, people also want to keep things on the down low and not be exposed as much and be more private with things. And that's going to start to challenge the dynamics because the moon is also connecting to Pluto in the group and the friends and the community and the social dynamic. So the politics or groups of people in some way could start to get pretty intense. Now this is first thing in the morning on Friday. But of course, in other places around the world, it could be later on in the day. Just consider it all day on Friday that the dynamics start to get really deep and intense, including group and community stuff, most likely. So it's kind of a wide orb T-square that the moon is activating, fixed T-square. So there also could be a lot of stubbornness here because Taurus, this last degree of Taurus, and then we got Aquarius, we got Scorpio, and then Leo. These are all fixed signs that aren't about being changeable. And yet the world is trying to change. Things are trying to change. So again, it can bring up a lot of stubbornness and fixed energy that's trying to hang on tight. So you have to be careful also from this point forward around a lot of manipulation, a lot of, more of the dramatic relationship stuff like jealousy, possessiveness, power and control issues, and overall manipulation. Now, this also starts a new phase about money and markets and bank type of stuff here, most likely from this point forward. Scorpio deals with other people's money, other people's resources. It deals with investments. And then Venus, about to change signs at the same time here, is going to lose its dignity. And so in a sense, you can put that in context to relationships. Some relationships are going to start to lose their dignity and get a little more raw and powerful and not wanting to maintain stability and peace and harmony as much and keep things nice and beautiful. Now people get more real as we come into these deeper dynamics. And that leads to, I would just say, best case scenario is excitability. You might want to be trying something new, something different from this point forward. So that can be both with personal preferences, what you're attracted to, what you desire. There's a need for change. There's a little bit of a rebelliousness. There's a need to do something different here. Be innovative, even with money, material life, physical life, how you work with it, what you're looking at for the future around money, investments. Your physical life wants to start to change. And again, you're going to really see that by next week and beyond, but this is kind of the turning point from this point forward. So I think that, to me, it just looks a little bit critical. There's a lot of inconjunctions going on, for the first part of the day, which shows a lot of adjustments have to be made to different dynamics that aren't cooperating with each other. And there can be a lot of irritation as well for around whatever is happening. Plus, like I said, this Neptune is very strong, stationary, retrograde. Everything is really amplified in this dissolving away of things of the past versus the future. Some uncertainty, some questions. I would think that there's a stronger potential for explosive things to be happening this week as well. Neptune often deals with explosions of some type. That can be oil, gas explosions. It could be chemical. It's hard to say, but sometimes there can be something exploding as well. I can't say that it'll be exactly on July 4th. It's possible. It could be any day of this week because Neptune is pretty much stationed all week and really overly amplified. The Neptune and the Saturn are being ruled by this Mars in Virgo, and Mars in Virgo is being ruled by Mercury in Leo, and now the moon and the circumstances are building up a square to that moon, Mercury. And then the moon comes back to, so it's kind of like connected to these three planets, the moon, Mars, and Mercury. So, again, I can't guarantee it, but there definitely could be explosive events this week, unfortunately. And the moon in conjunct having to make a lot of adjustments to the world stage as well, because there's this deeper dynamic that's hidden below the surface that's more private versus what's front and center with this Aries. So making adjustments to this world dynamic that's been going through this restructuring. Again, dissolving away the past versus building and structuring the future for a new world development. And then Venus changes signs, is now in Gemini. So I still, Venus is still Venus no matter where it goes. Venus still rules beauty and money, generally speaking, and love and relationship dynamics. So wherever Venus goes is where the good stuff typically goes. So now the good stuff is coming into Gemini. And Gemini is going to be the sign that's going to see the most changes now over the next 7 years or so, but not instantly. And at first, it's Venus here. So now, if wherever you have Gemini in your birth chart, that's where the pleasure is. That's where the beauty and the attraction is at this point. But Gemini is mental energy. It's up in the head. So there's now a general change in preferences for people to be more attracted to intelligence, mental stimulation, and conversations. And Venus in Gemini is typically a little more fickle. It's very changeable. So, you might get the love and the attention in one moment. It might not last very long. You just have to realize that with Venus in Gemini. Venus in Gemini is typically attracted to a variety of different things, and a lot of things like gadgets and, technical things as well. But it's mostly attracted to words and communication and the way somebody is speaking. So, again, it's much more changeable for relationship, and it does change financial matters most likely. I still think that there's a strong possibility of good stuff because the United States is going through a Jupiter Cancer transit, Jupiter return. And it's a very abundant position, but it's not perfect. We still have issues here and there. And now we have less dignity and strength for general value of things. But the value is now in a variety of different things. So people are going to be more attracted to, media and social media. Also, Gemini rules the hand. So, things just really start to change in general relationships, and totally at odds with this deeper dynamic that's going on during July 4th here with the moon in Scorpio squaring Pluto. Very intense emotions and feelings and circumstances that are much deeper than this Gemini position. Venus in Gemini, again, it's up in the head. It's a little more lighthearted. It doesn't want to get too serious in relationships. So that's one of the things that are probably going to be changing, even in personal relationships potentially. They don't want to be as physical at this point. They don't want to be as serious and deep. They want to have more fun. They want to be more lighthearted. They want to have some changes and doing a variety of different things. So short trips and traveling can be a new preference, generally speaking. Learning things, data and information, just being mentally curious and mentally stimulated could be a new preference. But just be willing to try new things within relationships. Like if you go out on dates, the dynamics are now different. People want different things from this point forward. So just realize that it may be a little more challenging to feel this deeper connection and this deeper intimacy, that the moon shows that people could also want. Some people may want the deeper component. Others might want to be more detached a little more and doing a variety of different things than the past. But I would also expect volatility, definitely some volatility this week. And also relationships get squirrely, so just expect that. They're not going to be as diplomatic and graceful from this point forward. And the moon squaring Pluto, this is happening 8:45 in the morning. So again, it really sets the tone for the rest of the day to be a little more intense with the group and the community and friendships as well. Now, Venus is going to be more aligned with Pluto in this more detached friendship type of way, community type of way. But the intimacy level, that's where things are going to be challenged. It is a little bit of a strong potential of a little bit of a crisis moment here on July 4th. I hope it doesn't manifest as anything like that, but it's possible. It could, because again, Scorpio deals with these deeper things of life, including death, unfortunately. But just pay attention to that and just know your surroundings. It is a holiday. It is going to be a busy social day, and things start off a little bit intense. But then the moon connects to Jupiter in a better way. As the day goes on here, then there's that trine from moon to Jupiter, which can be big emotions and big feelings and big circumstances, and it's all water, so it's all about feelings and emotions. But Jupiter in Cancer is a patriotic sign. It really is. It's about the homeland, and July 4th, it's going to be really big for the United States because of the Jupiter return happening. But then the Neptune's officially stationed retrograde on this day as well. So again, everything is overly amplified, and there can be some distortions going on, some lack of clarity in some ways. But this is more on the global stage of things. Like I said, I think it really comes back to dissolving away the past quickly, the old structure, systems, rules, and laws, and trying to build new ones very quickly. And now, as Neptune is going to be retrograde for several months, we're going to go back over those things that have already come up for this year to continue to dissolve away the past and structure new things for the future. But I'm really hoping this doesn't show explosive events, because we don't need any drama here on the 4th of July. And then the moon, as the day goes on, the moon is square that Mercury. So the heart and the mind can be on two different pages. There can be a lot of drama, like I said, with that aspect. That's going to be later on on Friday night. It's going to be exact about 9:30 on the West Coast, so super late into the early morning hours on the East Coast and other places around the world late on Friday night. That can be difficult for traveling and transportation, group and community and social type of stuff going on. That's a little bit critical and intense, perhaps. Mercury in Leo being ruled by the sun. Did I say that before? I forget if I did that. Anyway, Mercury in Leo is ruled by the sun, which is in Cancer, and sun in Cancer ruled by the moon in Scorpio, debilitated, and then the moon in Scorpio ruled by Mars. Mars in Virgo ruled by Mercury. So now it's the sun, Mercury, Mars, and the moon kind of in this dynamic, which are all lower level stuff happening. So it should be quite visible of what's going on with this dynamic on Friday night. So just be a little more cautious. It's a little more challenged to communicate, to get your feelings across, to understand others. Again, there can be technical stuff going on with communication. Now that Venus is in Gemini, it's being ruled by this Mercury as well. So even relationships could even be a little bit intense in this moment, because it comes back to Mercury in this square with the moon. It's only a temporary square, though. And the moon is also sextile Mars. So it feels like Friday night's very active, very busy in the world for things going on. And again, you should just be aware of this dynamic if you are out on Friday night really late. All day Friday, I'm thinking, is a kind of a critical day, actually. We'll be very lucky if we don't see anything happen in the world on the 4th of July. But it does show an emotional connection to Mars, action, the more aggressive side, the more critical side. And again, this can usually be a very dramatic moment here on late Friday night with the mood and the circumstances and communications and people going over the top with how they're expressing themselves. It's like Mercury in Leo is all about being bold and outgoing and self-expressive and, kind of like over the top with how people are acting and communicating. But the moon in Scorpio is like, no, let's not be exposed. Let's keep things on the down low. Let's do things the manipulative under the surface and not be as obvious with what we're doing. And so it creates a lot of dramatic tension with how people are expressing. Plus Pluto is kind of wrapped up into it all as well, the group and the community stuff. All right, so then we get to this weekend on July 5th. The moon is still in Scorpio, waxing forward. And now it's kind of past the most intense, dramatic stuff, it looks like. There's only two aspects going on for Saturday, and that is the moon in a trine with the sun. So, it's still in a deeper way. The moon is still debilitated, but it is at least in harmony with the sun. The inner and the outer are on the same page. It's all about feelings and emotions and the deeper side of life. It's more private. The sun in Cancer, still puts a focus on your inner world, your needs, safety, security, home and family stuff, versus the moon in Scorpio is more private, hidden. So this is a more inward vibe typically, and more about intuition and feelings. And then the moon is also connected to the nodes of fate for Saturday evening, it looks like. It's going to be exact. Yeah, Saturday night. So fateful day on Saturday as well with whatever's happening. Things that are happening could have, influence on the future, pushing us forward or on the path that we're meant to be. Things of the past could be connected as well. Things from behind the scenes, health, work, service stuff, things are more front and center in your everyday life routine, where Mars is really stirring up a lot. But it's fateful. It's the nodes of fate being activated for Saturday night. So Saturday is kind of this in-between day, kind of adjusting from the rest of the week and all these changes that took place. And then we get to Sunday, July 6th, and Venus is connecting to Saturn and Neptune. So Venus sextile Saturn. Again, this is a glimpse of a little bit of this new era. I think we're going to see it even more next week with Uranus there, but it's this minor grand trine of the outer planets that Venus is kind of bringing down to a closer way to people in regards to financial matters and relationship changes and preferences, like I said. So it's masculine. It's all about masculine energy here for this new era, which is Gemini, Aries, and Aquarius, masculine signs, fire and air. It's about new thoughts, new ideas, new ways of communicating. And again, that's going to be even more so when Uranus is there, revolutionary ways of doing Gemini. But Venus sextile Saturn can be something more. It's hard to say it's like super mature, because this is Aries and Gemini. These aren't the two like older mature signs. They're more youthful. And but Saturn generally is still about authority and maturity and responsibility, commitment. So Venus is connecting to Saturn in this new way, but it's only temporary. It's changeable still. But in this moment on Sunday, there can be a sense of looking at commitments and responsibilities in new ways. What are you willing to be committed to in relationship stuff or financially? It could also be looking at your future in some way about money and resources and your desires and needs. Gemini also deals with vehicles. Is there a need for a new vehicle, or do you have a desire for something new here in some way that you're wanting to make a commitment to for the future? It's possible in some cases. But opposition is also building with the moon. Venus also connecting to Neptune at the same time here on Sunday. I wouldn't say that this is super like romantic vibes. Like usually Venus and Neptune connecting can be a little more romantic, but this is just something very, very different. Again, this minor grand trine that's about the new era. And it's more about dreams, inspirations, fantasies, desires that are being stimulated for people and what they want in new ways for the future. So the ideas are really changing now to be very different from the past. People are more open to looking at the future in some new way that's innovative, that's different, that's, again, dreamy. There's fantasy in some cases. There could be even something coming out in media. It could even be new technology. It's definitely, the future is going to be about science and technology in really powerful ways. We're not going to just see it instantly, but that's going to be the future. This next 10 to 20 years is going to be mind-blowing with technology, and not all in good ways, but it can be exciting too for some people. But there could be something even coming out in some sort of a new product coming out, new technology of some kind that has value for people, that's exciting, and something like that is possible that starts to come in by either Sunday or next week. And then Venus is also going to be trine Pluto by Monday, but here on Sunday, the moon is in conjunct to Chiron, so there's still a little bit of this deeper mood and intensity from behind the scenes, below the surface, connecting to the individuality, how people feel, their confidence or vulnerabilities, adjusting to sensitivities in some way first thing on Sunday morning. But then there's going to be a mood change because the moon will be ingressing Sagittarius. Right after the moon, though, opposes Uranus. So this is later on the afternoon hours of Sunday. Moon at a critical degree of Scorpio opposing this last bit of Uranus and Taurus. It's like a turning point from this point forward. It's an opposition, but a turning point. It could stir up a little bit of surprises and unpredictability, some disruptions and circumstances of the mood, mood changes for some people on Sunday afternoon and evening. And then the moon does ingress Sagittarius, and there is a big mood change. For the next 2.5 days, the moon will be waxing through Sagittarius, and this typically is a phase that starts to deal with a lot of worldly stuff, on the world stage and culture, religion stuff, educational stuff in new ways. Starts to come in for Sunday into next week. But the moon also connects to things in a better way as it comes into Sagittarius. So mood and feelings, they get big. And now with the moon in Sag, opposite Venus and Gemini, this is a totally new dynamic by Sunday into Monday. This is about, again, people wanting to be more detached and lighthearted and playful, less serious, especially in relationship. They don't want to be as serious and deep and intense. They want to be kind of having fun. The moon in Sagittarius is the comedian moon, wants to laugh and have a good time and not take things too seriously. It is connecting to Saturn, so there's still a sense of responsibility, where it's not just crazy or out of hand, but there wants to be detachment, it most likely looks like, and maybe even things about travel, wanting to be more adventurous, explore. It could either be literally, physically, wanting to be out and more active, or it could be about learning things, being mentally stimulated and curious and, about learning different things, learning, teaching, communicating, networking, podcasting, writing, speaking, being more social in ways. So if it's not just wanting to have a good time, being more adventurous and outgoing, in the world and joking around, then it can be more philosophical, educational, things like that. Now that the moon is in Sagittarius, it's being ruled by Jupiter exalted in Cancer. So this can be a better phase here as the day goes on Sunday, perhaps. There's still some background stuff, but we're really getting a glimpse, of something very new, it feels like. Still has a connection to the homeland and feelings and needs and safety, security stuff. But now it's more globally with Moon and Sagittarius. But again, circumstances can be over the top for good or bad. There can be more indulgences that start to come in with this opposition to Venus. It's just that, again, the mood and the desires aren't going to be long lasting. People are going to be more changeable and wanting a variety of different activities and things going on as we come into Sunday evening and then into next week. And it's also like a culmination point of some kind. You know, something's coming to a head and we're at a turning point. And then the moon connecting to Pluto as well can really activate this social dynamic. So now there's two minor grand trines going on at the same time for Sunday night. So an empowerment, a mood change, it's more empowering. It's better connected to the group and the friends and the community and social dynamics. More attraction to wanting to be more social, generally speaking, for people. Traveling becomes a bigger thing as well from this point forward. So, yeah, that's what I'm seeing for Sunday. And then we get into Monday on July 7th. The moon is still waxing through Sagittarius, and Venus is connected to Pluto. Again, there's a stronger desire and attraction for the group, the friends, and the community, for media, social media, networking, and communications. And this is where Uranus is now ingressed Gemini first thing on Monday, first aspect. So we're really getting a glimpse from this point forward now of this minor grand trine in this new era, with all the outer planets connecting to each other. There's some sort of a new world dynamic that's starting to come in for the future that we're getting a glimpse of. It's not permanent. It's not fully developed because, again, this is more about being in the in-between phase of this new world dynamic that will fully be moving forward in, like I said, by next year of 2026. But this is it. We're seeing something very new and different now. And now Taurus is finally free in the short term of any major transits. Taurus can start to be more stable again finally. It's not permanently because people that have 27, 28, 29 degrees of Taurus are still going through a once-in-a-lifetime Uranus transit, until it's complete by next year. But in this moment, for the next few months, Taurus is free of this Uranus, which can add more stability in some ways, especially wherever you have Taurus in your birth chart that's been going through radical changes this last 7 years, 6 to 7 years. And now Uranus in Gemini is being ruled by Mercury. No longer Venus is in charge of what Uranus is doing. And Mercury in Leo is. And Mercury's in its retrograde shadow, so there's still going to be a lot of processing about what this new vibe is that's coming in strong. So with Uranus in Gemini, again, it's about revolutionary thoughts and ideas, and the way people communicate is a little more revolutionary. Their words, the way they speak, which in this first part of it with Mercury ruling it in Leo, it's going to be more dramatic and bold and, of their thoughts and their ideas about things. But it's also about new technology that's getting more and more powerful, because eventually Uranus and Pluto will be in a perfect trine, which is going to be really a lot of new technology. But again, I almost feel like there's something new coming out either this weekend or next week that's a little bit technical in some way. Maybe it has something to do with vehicles or transportation. There just feels like there's something new available, or something with air, some sort of traveling or transportation, new technology. Feels like it's coming out, and it feels like it has value because Venus is next to it. So I'd be very surprised if we don't see some sort of new product. It could also be new products coming out in the world, new gadgets, new technologies in all kinds of different ways. Even phones, computers are going to start to be changing. I can't guarantee we'll instantly see that here on Monday, but it will be the future. A lot of new technology with gadgets in different ways. But this is also, this new era will be about new vehicles, not just electric. It's going to be even more futuristic. If you remember back last year when there was all those drone sightings up in the sky and everybody was talking about aliens, well, in my opinion, those were flying drones and technology by companies, maybe flying cars or other forms of new transportation that they were testing out secretly. And now I think we're going to start to see more and more of what all that is. And again, it's going to be a lot of revolutionary technology coming out in different ways. But also, there's new media. This is going to be a revolutionary transit for social media, but also mainstream media is going to be changing over this next several years. Again, we're not going to just see everything instantly happen with this new transit, but it's going to be the beginning of this process coming out. Now, Trump is an example of Uranus and Gemini. So we can get insight based on how Trump is. If you think about how Trump speaks and communicates impulsively, he just speaks his mind, and it's a little more unpredictable how he speaks. That's an example because he's Sun Uranus. His identity is Uranus and Gemini. So those are the types of vibes that are going to be coming out more and more for people. The way people communicate themselves is a little more blunt and radical and different and revolutionary. That's what it all comes back down to, is revolutionary ways of speaking and communicating ideas and thoughts. This will also start to affect the educational system, both lower education and higher education. Now, again, it won't be instant, but there is going to be radical changes to the educational system in different places around the world that start to build up. This is also, again, a lot about technology with traveling in new ways. It could be about even transportation, big rigs and changing. It could be, it's going to be connected to transportation in some way for the future. But it's connecting to all the outer planets. So there's a cooperation here on a new world order kind of vibe with this Saturn and Neptune on the world point, which they're going to be perfectly exact at 0 degrees of Aries next February, which is the true new beginning for this new world dynamic that's being built. At the same time, dissolving away the past, structure, systems, rules, and laws, and all that I said. So this is also connecting to Saturn and Neptune. So this is also about new rules and systems and structures for Gemini. But it's also affecting Sagittarius. It's also going to affect health because Uranus will now be, squaring both Pisces and Virgo with this new transit as well. So all the mutable signs are going to be going through revolutionary changes. But it's going to be year by year depending on the degree. So if you have personal planets at the first couple degrees of Gemini, you're really going to start to feel this revolutionary change for your own personal life. It depends on the personal planet you have at 0 Gemini or 0 Virgo. Now, if you have 0 Virgo or 0 Sagittarius, or let's say 0 to 1 degree for right now, for the rest of this year. If you have 0 Virgo, Sag, or Pisces, then this is more of a kind of a forced revolutionary change for you that's not as smooth or easy. If you have those degrees, it could be more of surprises and unpredictability, that things that just happen in your life that are trying to change your life. So, be aware of that it's going to be a revolutionary change. I would mostly look at the inner planets like, Venus and the moon and the sun and Mercury and Mars. If you have Pluto, well, you probably don't have Pluto there, but the outer planets aren't as personalized. So it's mostly if you have your inner planets at the first couple degrees of the mutable signs. And if you have the first couple degrees of Gemini, you're really in this moment of starting to feel revolutionary changes for your life and something much different happening. So it all depends on the planet. If you have Venus there, of course, it's about relationships, but I can't really generalize because every one of your personal planets is a ruler of one of your areas of life, and it's different for everybody. So, I don't want to get too deep into the meaning of that for a personal transit, but generally it's about a new way. It's the mind going through revolutionary changes in communications and media and education and traveling, transportation. Generally, it could also show, and this is very generally, there could be revolutionary changes or surprises about your siblings. There could be some sort of a new dynamic with neighbors in some cases, but again, that's not everybody. That's just very generally speaking. So I'll get more into it. We're going to have years to be talking about this new transit of Uranus and Gemini, but it's definitely a new era that we're picking up on. That's about a masculine new era. I've said this in the past. We've been in a feminine era for many years, which is more inward and more passive and more about feelings of things and, feminine versus masculine. Masculine era is more outward and more about taking charge and initiating big things, and pushing forward. And it all comes back to the apex of Aries, which is all about initiation into new territory with the world. So we're just coming into a more outward phase for the world and less of this passive inward phase. And both are fine. We go through both in different phases, and both are needed. And again, we are now in a masculine era, but we're not done with the feminine, because we're going to all these planets are going to retrograde back to the feminine signs, and we're going to be closing out the past in those ways before we fully come back to this masculine era for 2026 and beyond. And in this phase, we have a combination of a lot. We still have a lot of feminine going on here in this temporary moment, but in the bigger context for the world, Gemini, Aquarius, and Aries is what the true new era is about. And again, there's a sense of cooperation in a big way here of setting up what this future is all about. All right, so next week, we're really going to start to see these changes even more so. And Venus trine Pluto on Monday. Intense desires and attractions with social stuff and group and friends and community stuff and media, networking, communications. All of that is very, very strong and passionate. And then the moon is also in conjunct to Jupiter. But there's a mutual reception going on here. This is a powerful phase, actually, by next Monday with circumstances and the mood and the feelings, because there's a mutual reception, but they're also having to adjust to each other. This safety, security need, this inward side of trying to get what we need, what we want, emotional stuff, home and family stuff, versus this more outward vibe of wanting to be more adventurous and outward and active. So feelings and emotions are very strong, but the need for safety and security is also very strong. And then the moon is trine Mercury, so this is where the heart and the mind are in better alignment at first, but there's also a square to Mars at the same time, so there can still be some criticalness going on Monday afternoon, a sense of impulsiveness, and but also strong, passionate communications at the same time. So kind of a mixed bag right there in the afternoon hours of Monday, but still could be a little bit critical here with communications and how people are communicating and taking action. Could still be some issues with health that are coming up on Monday. And moon square Mars. And then the last aspect of the day is moon in conjunct to the sun. So it's a mixed bag on Monday. Some easy, some new, excitable new things happening, and some challenges at the same time. So the heart, or the inner and the outer, are on two different pages. Again, the circumstances want to be more outward, more fun, more self-expressive, more indulgent. And the sun is focused on safety, security, comfort, your inner life, healing, home, family, and stuff like that we're adjusting to. All right, so that's what I have for you, folks. I hope that is interesting and helpful. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you have a great week ahead. So take good